Hey, it's Ryan here. I'm going to go over the fatalities in MMA. And you never really hear about this, you just hear about it in boxing. I suppose because MMA is generally newer than boxing historically. And we've come a long way medically. I think there's a lot of reasons. Like, there aren't a lot of boxing fights today that lead to deaths either. But some of these MMA events where people die, I feel like there's patterns. So, some of them might be like how how good the medical care is before and after the fight. Because when I Googled that for the UFC, that's what it said, and I believe it. Other times I think it's just bad luck, and I also think the UFC's just lucky they haven't had certain things happen in other fight organizations. It's just one fight organization out of many, so that partially explains it. Um, yeah, it's just hard to know unless you really dig into the details how somebody died because they might have pre-existing conditions. Um, At least in boxing, they have it where you're automatically suspended if you take a certain amount of injuries for a certain amount of time and for good reason so that you don't um, have like pre-existing conditions going into another fight and likely have more injuries or death. Now, for Sam Vasquez, I didn't see the video. Some of these might be on YouTube or somewhere else. Um, I know Justin Thornton's is. You can look it up on YouTube. His head basically, like his chin seems to hit the canvas as he's going down, and these aren't always the case of late stoppages. I don't believe that was a late stoppage because he only took a couple punches and he just fell to the ground. I mean, unless you think the ref should be like so close to the fighters that they should be able to hold somebody up after they're falling, but I mean, they can't really do that, I feel like, unless they it's hard to foresee all that and step in time and not be in the way of the fighters and if you're going to step in like that, you would also have to call the fight off. So, you would have to be sure that the other person won the fight. Um we don't see that in the UFC either, and the UFC doesn't have these things happen. Some of these happen in other countries or in it looks like cities or states where they don't have the same like like laws as other states like California. I can't say that for sure, but that's just my guess because California has really strict laws in general for everything, not just MMA, but everything. So, and partly because there's so many people that naturally they're going to have more and more laws than smaller states. And I mean, a lot of these, it seems to happen from, of course, brain damage. And at least I know in California, you're legally required to have an ambulance on standby. And I know that because this local Muay Thai promoter from Main Event Muay Thai near Sacramento. He had he was on a podcast and was talking about that. Um, let's just look over this a little bit more though. Some of these happen in the same states too, like South Carolina, but maybe. It's a lot less likely now with certain laws being passed. Um, I think the moral of the story is if you're fighting for like an organization that doesn't have a lot of money around it, like it's just a smaller fight league, especially look into if they have ambulances, if they have doctors. Don't fight when you already have pre-existing conditions. Yeah, stay safe. Some of these I don't even really count though, because if they can't be conclusive about the autopsy and there's no evidence of a concussion or brain trauma, then, and they think it might be something else, then I wouldn't really count that. I mean, even though it could be, like, we probably should only be looking at the cases where it was confirmed. And it's really hard to tell with just the details here. I wish it would say exactly um, what happened because it might not really have been from taking a punch to the chin. It probably was more than that. Like, how did he fall afterwards? Or, like, did he have pre-existing conditions? Because otherwise, if someone died every time they took a punch to the chin, we would have, like, everyone dying that gets knocked out. So, that, I don't know. I know it's possible, but I just feel like there's probably more to the story than what you might read on Wikipedia. So you really got to look into it. Um, if it's in the Congo, I'm guessing a lot of it would have to do with um, possibly their lack of medical care or knowing how to treat it right. Um, yeah, pre-existing conditions, hypertensive heart disease. So this one, I don't know if I would count it either. And then this one, difficulty breathing, um, his kidneys began to fail, severe dehydration, but he already had sickle cell. Um, and that's probably the most dangerous thing about the UFC, talking about dehydration and weight cutting. Um, I don't understand why they don't weigh in like right before they fight, because if you allow someone to weigh in like a day or 2 or 3 days before the fight, I know it sells probably more tickets because then it's like more footage for people to watch, even though you don't really learn anything from a weigh-in or even really from a face-off. I don't know exactly all the reasons why they structure it like that, but I think, well, one possible reason could be like, well, they have time to hydrate themselves because they if they have 24 hours, but I just think it's safer to not do it like that because then people are trying to cut as much weight as possible and then just try to hydrate it all back and you risk cutting too much weight. But if it has to be right before the fight, just like Joe Rogan said, even though I had that opinion before I heard it from him, then it would stop all these problems because people would know that, hey, if I'm doing extreme weight cutting, then I'm going into the fight weak. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a reasonable weight cut and not some crazy fast weight cut. Um, anyways, yeah, so if there is a death in the UFC, it might be related to that. Plus, it seems like all of these, yeah, were bad luck in combination with either pre-existing conditions or lack of medical coverage or something else. Um, blunt force trauma to the head. See, there's not enough details. Um, but I do know that if you don't have medical, like a medical review before and after, you don't have an ambulance on standby, that could lead to a death. And in one of these, it did. Um, and some of these are like unsanctioned events. Like you probably don't want to do like underground like events because if they're not doing things by the law, by the books, then you're more likely to suffer an injury. And okay, unsanctioned. Um, could have been because the way he fell on the mat after being, I think, injured. So this one, Mike Mittelmeyer, an illegal kick, but regardless of the legality, um, it was a strong kick. And see, this is the one where they didn't have a doctor or ambulance on standby. So that was the other reason. And another brain damage, death. Um, but it was related to an injury from a week prior. So it's not, they're not sure if, well, it seemed like the fight added on to it, but that might have not been the primary cause. And then this one, he was mounted, taking strikes. Um, so I'm trying to see how this is different from any of the other ones. Medical testing wasn't done before or after, it seems like. Where was this at? In Michigan? Okay, well, they probably changed the regulations since that death. And then this one, um, who knows? But it caused his head to hit the canvas, so that was probably the reason. Just like Thornton hit his head after he was knocked out. 'Cause I don't think it's normally the knockout that kills you. It's the when you hit your head. Like you could knock someone out, and if they hit their head, there's like fall in their head. There's a lot more likely chance of them dying. And then um, amateur bouts are not required to have medical staff on hand. Why? Yeah, that's kind of a stupid law. Like just because it's the amateur or lack of law, just because it's the amateurs doesn't mean that people aren't going to be hurt. Like you're just as likely to get hurt as a pro fight. So yeah, that makes no sense. As far as should there be an age limit in fighting, I don't know. That's a good point that maybe we should have age limits in fighting. But Mike Tyson fought at what 59 or 58 years old. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, if you are older, I feel like brain damage, yeah, is more likely to cause serious injury or death or you're more likely to get knocked out. But I don't think we should have an arbitrary age limit necessarily. Maybe, but most people, like 99% of people, retire by the time they're like in their late 40s. And then this one, no governing body. So to sum it up, the main reasons why people die in MMA fights or probably even boxing fights is a lack of medical checks before and after and medical coverage, having ambulances on standby, having none of that for various reasons, but also bad luck, like the way you hit your head on the canvas. Um, yeah, I don't know what they could do for some of these ones where it's like just they hit their head on the canvas. It's like you would have to have the canvas very soft or I don't really know. But I mean, you're going into an MMA fight, um shouldn't expect to die, but like you should expect to get hurt. So they're grown adults signing contracts. But yeah, don't go in there probably if you have a pre-existing condition, and they shouldn't let you. And I also believe that if you have a medical issue before the fight, you should have to release it, right? Because that's what they do for boxing, or sorry, not boxing, football, where people used to hang out in the locker rooms and see if a player was injured to decide whether they would bet for or against that team. And then eventually the the NFL made it so that any injury has to be reported, so people aren't basically like taking advantage of insider information for betting. But that's how it should be for boxing and MMA though. Why should somebody like Marab cover up that they have a leg injury, or in boxing, Madrimov not disclose that he has bronchitis versus Virgil Ortiz when people are betting on these guys? And they need to know, is he sick? Um, and if so, what illness is it? Like, that stuff should be reported. They can still possibly fight with, say, bronchitis, but that needs to be reported because otherwise it just encourages um, insider information to affect betting. And then also, people are less likely to want to bet if it seems too unpredictable. Just like that's why they have laws for investing, because otherwise it would just be so volatile, like no one would invest in it. But they have certain laws to kind of prevent all that. So, thanks for watching.